My name's Natalie Powell. I've done judo since I was 8 years old, and I did it probably professionally, you could say, it's from 21 to 34, and I recently retired at the end of last year. I was really lucky enough to travel with the British team for 15 years, all around the world on the IGF tour. I won a few medals along the way. I won the Commonwealth Games. I got a world medal, a few European medals, and I was ranked number 1 in the world for a short period in 2017. Since I finished judo, I'm now working for Golf Wales as a pathway and high performance officer, which I'm really enjoying. Been there a few months now, so it's my first proper job outside of sport. So it's a bit of a change, a nice transition period. But really enjoyed it. Really nice people, great environment, and not stepping away from performance support, which is an area that I've always been really passionate about. So that's really nice. I'm also doing a lot of coaching at the moment as well, working with Cardiff Judo Academy, which doing that 2 or 3 nights a week, which is nice to keep my hand in with judo as well. So it's not a complete separation after all these years. So,
well, that's obviously a great insight in terms of you. And as you say there, you had that 15-year period of high performance competitiveness, and that consistent traveling, the different types of games that you've been at, that growth from being a young 21-year-old to a mature 30-year-old who has that experience over the growth of, going from exploring the games for the first time and competing against someone on the stage and those nerves to perhaps taking it in your stride because it's become so natural to you. And it's so you touched upon judo since you were 8 years old, right? Was there an influence at the time, or was it just a peak of interest? How did you get into it?
So as a kid, I was just sport mad, really. I wanted to do everything. I did a lot of netball, tennis, football, athletics when I was in primary school. And one of the boys in primary school, he was doing judo. And my mum was at home and she was getting annoyed with me and my dad because we'd always fight in the kitchen and we'd knock things over, break things. And when she heard this from one of the mums, she was like, okay, that sounds like the solution to my problem. So she said, do you want to go and try judo? You can just fight as much as you want in a controlled environment. So I was like, yeah, 100%. That sounds good. And I went along and loved it. Didn't look back. It was Irvine Judo Club in Bilf Wells with Richard and Philip Jones. And started judo with them. And I really enjoyed it and carried on for years and years.
That's great because I'm a teacher full time, right? And one of the things that I say to students is you never know when your potential will become unlocked. And you've all got it within you. And you don't know what opportunity will come your way, right? And that's the sort of same thing which you've touched upon there, because unless you were wrestling with your dad or unless your mum said, right, why don't we go on down and that would be perfect, you might never have gotten into judo and might never have unlocked that potential which was really in you. And the journey which you've gone on from just wrestling in the kitchen and having that laugh with your dad to being, ranked number 1 in the world and a Commonwealth champion is truly an incredible opening of what is really within every person that they might not realize.
Yeah, it's mad. I've definitely never had any. Well, obviously you dream about going to the Olympic Games or doing those things, but you never really think it's actually going to be a reality. I think it was only really late in my career. Probably, I think I went to the first games at 26, and it was probably only like when I was about 24 that I actually thought, oh, this could be a possibility. I remember my very first competition on the international circuit with the British squad. I hadn't even gripped the opponent, and I was on my back. And then my second contest, I think I got my hands on, and then I was thrown. So, at that point, it seemed a very long way away from ever actually even winning a fight abroad, let alone, winning medals.
And when it comes to that, and you talk about, having that first fight and it perhaps didn't go the way that you pre-planned it, how you might have imagined it, and all of those different psyche that comes into it and all the preparation that you might put in physically, right? And you think, right, I finally got to a really good point. I want to go and compete. This could really open up doors. This could help me go on and win medals, which you went on and did. But at that moment where you are flipped over for the first time and perhaps in a position which you don't want to be, you could be sort of thinking in that moment, right, is this going to really knock back my potential? Is this the start that I really want, right? It's like a boxer going into their first fight and losing their first fight. They really want to win that first fight, and if they can win that first one, it gives them that projection to keep building. Whereas if they lose, then they sort of have to come back a little bit stronger to try and rebuild that performance and to gear forward in terms of what they do. But when you were in that position and you lost or had the negative outcome which you didn't want, was there a thought process the moment you went down, and when the opponent won that, you were like, this is going to be tough for me to build onto my second fight? Did it knock you mentally a little bit?
I think at that stage, I was just enjoying going away with my friends, going to new countries. I really enjoyed training. I've always really enjoyed training, just working hard. But in terms of the competition side of things, I don't think I ever really considered being an elite judo player or going to the Olympic Games. I think being from Wales, Commonwealth Games was always on my radar, and that always felt like something that was achievable because I'd seen people around me do that. So that was always my dream, to win the Commonwealth Games. But once I did that, I think it opened a whole new world to me. And my coach that I worked with for 8-10 years, the last 8 to 10 years of my career, I started working with him just before the Commonwealth Games. And he, if he hadn't came into my career, that he was the game changer in my career, really. He taught me what it was like to be professional. He showed me what was possible, made me believe in myself. It completely just changed from there, really, and opened a whole new world to me. And then I started to think, okay, this could be possible. I could go to the Olympic Games. I could win medals. And I just put my trust in him. I trained like he told me to. I ate like he taught me to, and just gradually my performance started improving. I started getting Grand Prix medals, Grand Slam, and the level just kept stepping up every year. Our relationship was great. He really knew what he was doing, and it took me to that next level, really.
I think that's something which I've been reading by Tim Grover. He was the personal trainer of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. And in his book, Relentless, he talks about how when you step into his gym, it's how he wants you to perform. It's when you're going to do what he tells you to do when you eat. It's going to be that physical preparation. You abide by his rules. And if that's not for you, then you take that step out of the gym and go and do it elsewhere, because you have to be relentless to get into that mindset to really gear you up. And it sounds like your coach did that for you. And that can be a real game changer by not only tweaking and having those adjustments, but having maybe a complete overhaul from the way that you walk in to the way that you mentally prepare to physically prepare, and then how you review your performance after that, right? But where you talked about what it was like to be professional and how he developed that side of you, what can you explore that a little bit more? How did you become more professional? What did he expect of you?
I think it's interesting because I've always been very all in. I mean, in terms of my exams in school, like I was very obsessive. I wanted to get straight A's. I wanted to do as good as I can. I remember crying one night because I didn't know how to revise for my maths GCSE. My mum was always trying to tear me away from the books rather than give me them, which is probably the opposite to most kids. But I've always been all in on whatever I do. So I think that's just a trait that's within me. But you don't know what you don't know. And one of the first things Darren did when so my coach's name is Darren Warner. One of the first things he did when he came in, he could see that my diet probably wasn't as good as it could be. I was having dessert with a lot of my meals, which wasn't ideal. And he was like, well, I think the dessert's going to have to maybe stop. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to stop doing that. And I'm just all or nothing. So straight away, I was like, oh, I respect this guy. I can't say to him, I'm not going to eat dessert and then eat dessert. I have to actually do it. So that was a bit scary because I was committing to actually not eating dessert with any of my meals going forward. But I did it. And within 6 months, my body fat had changed from like 29% to 18% in 6 months. All I did was cut out dessert. My body completely changed. I stayed the same weight, but my body composition completely changed. And that coincided with, I was looking at the top 15 girls in the world and thinking, how am I different to them? And body composition was a big difference from my perception. So when he said that, it fitted with what I was thinking myself, really. And I just needed that little nudge in the right direction to do that. And that big change just was massive for me in terms of physicality from early days from working with Darren. And then we had like competitions. So one of the things when he came in, I've always had a struggle to believe in myself, really. I don't know if that's to do with Welsh culture. We're all kind of got the underdog mentality a little bit as a nation sometimes. And I went to Budapest, so that was my first competition with him in the chair. And I'd said to him that I felt like I wasn't fit enough. And often my fights would go 2 minutes. If I hadn't won in those first 2 minutes, then I'd lose because I'd get tired. So he said to me, okay, today we're not going to go after medals or anything like that. I just want to see where we're at. I want to see how fit you are. So in every fight, just fight as hard as you can until you get tired, and then we'll know where you are, and then we can move forward for the next competition. So I fought, and all I was thinking about, my only goal was just to fight hard and keep going for as long as I can. And I ended up getting a bronze in the Grand Prix that day. I hadn't thought about my fitness all day because all I was thinking about was, okay, the task is to see how fit I am. And when you took that away, it turned out I wasn't that unfit after all. It was just getting in my head. Once I got to those 2 minutes, I was panicking because I hadn't thrown the opponent. But he knew this. So he'd spoke to me over the last 3 months, really got to know me. He was figuring out how I ticked. And he used that as a way to prove to me, oh, actually, you're not unfit. That's just in your head. But I had the evidence there. So it was a combination of a lot of little moments like that where he was just really getting to know me and showing me that I can do more than I think, and the differences these little things make. And over the next 8 years, there was a lot of little moments like that that built up to get the success we did, really.
And I think that's the importance. You have to analyze and review that position, that performance. You have to review the person themselves. You analyze it, and those little tweaks to find what might be the underlying issue in all of that. And that came down to mindset, because you might have had a coach who looked at the continuous physical preparation, your physical performance, and might have just continuously made tweaks towards that, but actually might have never realized it was that mindset and the mind. And you could have had a record where you had 7, 8, 9 losses on the bounce because your physical performances weren't achieving the levels that he wanted or yourself, etc. And that mindset might never have been unlocked. So the important thing is that you look at the psyche of an individual and you see what ticks and you see what's affecting them, and then really getting a pathway where you can start to review what works for them and what isn't. So one of the key questions which I had for you, right, was, did you ever compare yourself to other athletes and other individuals? Because that's a question and a thing which we see a lot is never compare yourself with other people. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? And there you are comparing yourself against others, especially physical, and that can lead to a lot of different physical and mental consideration, especially when you're a bit younger, especially when you're trying to compete in the world of sport, especially when there's medals and success on the line. How much did that get into your head when you were comparing yourself to other people, and did you consistently do that across your career, especially towards when you started to retire?
I think when I was younger, I definitely compared myself to people a lot more. But I don't think it never ever had a negative effect. I would just see it as competition. If somebody was good at something, I wanted to be better. I never, or in school, I always wanted to get the best grades. I always was very competitive and always wanted to be the best at whatever I did. So I don't think I ever compared myself to people in a negative way. If people were better than me, that was fine. I just wanted to be better than them, just used it as fuel to be better. But then as I got older, I think when I worked with Darren, he probably instilled this a lot more. I just needed to keep being better than I am all the time. So it wasn't so much against everybody else. It was very much each day, what am I going to do to be better than I was yesterday? We had loads of short-term goals, medium, long-term, and they were all process-based, just about getting better. I didn't really ever have, like, I want to win. Obviously, naturally, you want to win the Olympics, you want to win the world, you want to get all these medals. But actually, when I achieved the European medals, the world medals, it wasn't from setting that goal. It was actually just very process focused. Well, how do I get better at my gripping? How do I get better at ashiwaza? How do I get better at executing my main throws? It wasn't, all right, I need to win the World Europeans here. So actually, all my best results come from just focusing on the process, not having those big end goals, really. And then in the latter part of my career, when I was chasing that Olympic medal that I was the one missing from my collection, it was very much focused on, I want to get that medal because that was the one I really wanted, and that probably did detract from the process in some and being present. When I look back at it a bit, it was a bit too much focused on that one yeah, one goal.
But yet there you were going on to achieve the goal which you wanted. So it's quite interesting when you look at, you know, the performance, the psyche, the objective, and comparing that and comparing what worked and what perhaps wasn't working upon that review. But you can also look and say, right, I achieved that goal which I wanted, right? But say you hadn't achieved it by the age of 34 and you knew that it was something where it was still within you, it's something that you always want to achieve. Do you think you still would have retired at 34 if you hadn't have won what you wanted?
Well, I won a lot of medals that I'm really proud of, but I didn't get the Olympic medal. That was the icing on the cake. So that was the reason I went for the extra 4 years from Tokyo. I was probably at my best in Tokyo, and I burnt out a little bit before it, really. And with the COVID, I think went a bit too hard for that last year and burnt out, and it just didn't work out for me as I'd hoped. So those extra 4 years, I think, to Paris was, can I still get that Olympic medal? It's the one that I really want. But I think it was probably a little bit too late for me then. I think my desire and my heart, I'd worked very hard for a long time. My mind was, I think I didn't want it as bad as I had wanted it. And I think once that fire is not ignited to the level it needs to be, it's very hard to get that extra few percent out of you when you really need it. Like judo being a combat sport, when you're in the thick of golden score, you need to really want it. Your heart needs to, unquestionably want it. And that for my whole career, that was never a question until those last few years. So it was just time for me. I wasn't gonna get my best performances then at that latter part. The body and the mind was done. So it's just ready for the next chapter, really, which is quite nice in a way. I didn't have any regrets. I'd given it my all for my career, and it was somebody else's time.
It's interesting that you talk about it being someone else's time when you always talked about, right, I had to be the best in the discipline or the area that I wanted to be, especially having that mindset from when you're younger. So you maintained that for such a long period, which is quite hard to sustain for a long period of time, especially traveling to competitions and those reflections and reviews and reviewing the performances and looking at what you won, didn't win, and that constant process and those tweaks. There's a lot which really goes into it, and sometimes when you retire, you can just have that space to breathe and just be yourself, and whether it's going on a holiday or just catching up on things which you haven't seen over the 15-year period. But it's interesting when you say it is someone else's time. It's almost that acceptance of, right, I've had my career and I'm okay with that. Whereas you see some athletes and they really struggle with that transition. They don't want to hand over their shirt or their spot to someone else because deep down that's always theirs, and their heart might still be there, but their physical performances, whereas you had that on the flip side a little bit. And part of what my thinking was when you were talking is, we often see athletes slow down, between 28 onwards, and they might still perform very highly at 29 and 30. We get to see it in elite athletes now, even in Ronaldo. Look at him, 41, still performing very well, still very fit, still very motivated to keep playing. And he's been doing that, since 16, 17, and it's incredible the mindset which goes into it. But typically for most athletes, you can see that sort of transition between hitting the peak performance and being younger and leading up to that, and then they're sort of okay years and then a little bit of a decline then as they get a little bit older. So you get to see some players 36, 37, and you compare them to when they were 26, 27, 28, and then in their peak performance. And sometimes it's hard as fans and those watching to see your favorite athlete still performing because their peak years have gone, but their heart is still there, right? So when you were in that sort of mindset and knowing that your performance was dropping off a little bit, how hard was that to really adjust and accept, especially when you've been at your peak, especially when you've had the fitness levels which were always going to be your best at that point, especially when you feel that everything was going well and you're just getting into a position where that is slightly slipping away from you a little bit, and that's outside of your realms and control, because unfortunately Mother Nature and Father Time is always ticking on everyone's doors, and that's something which is constantly my mindset. When you're that young 23, 24-year-old and you've got that motivation, you're doing well in your career, and then you're 28 and you're like, oh, I'm not quite where I wanted to be, and people think that potential is not there as much because you're not 24, etc. Was that a difficult period and a difficult mindset to adjust into?
Yeah, it was really difficult because I've always got my confidence from the workload that I put in. just been on the mat loads, doing lots of randori, which is fight practice. Like when I was 22, 23, like we'd go to Mittersill, which is a camp we go to every January, and I'd be doubling up on every fight, like doing maybe like 140 randoris in like a 7-day period. Whereas when I'm at the end of my career, 30, 34, I can't do that. I'm going to be broken very fast if I do that volume of work. And that's where I've always got my confidence from. It's just doing the volume and knowing I've put the effort in. But as you get older, the judo's still there. The judo's there. You don't need the volume because the technical, the patterns and everything, they're set. It's more from the conditioning and the mindset side of things. But getting used to that new balance, it's very difficult, especially when the people you're competing against, they're young, they're coming through and you see them doubling up every session. And you're like, I used to do that and I can't do that now. So then you're like, oh, but I can't, but it's a new me. I've got to like be sensible. I mean, the amount of rehab I had to do in the last 2 years of my career, I was doing more rehab than I was on the mat. And if I didn't do that rehab, I couldn't even step on the mat in order to randori. So I had some knee troubles, maybe a year out from Paris. I tore my MCL and had found out that I got no ACL, which is mad that I didn't know that. I haven't had an ACL for the majority of my career. We found out when I tore the MCL. I had to come back from that. So there was a lot of rehab involved in my last year just to get back fighting. But after that, I couldn't commit to the techniques that I used to commit to. My OLY was one of my best techniques, and I couldn't commit to it unless I was really, really warmed up. And often, you're stiff, so you can't get your body to the warmth it needs to be in order to function properly. So it was just difficult in the last 18 months. Your heart's not in it like it used to be, and your body's saying, I think all the signs were just saying, nah, it's time to step away now and move on to the next chapter. So it was quite nice in the end. I mean, it felt like it was time. I had a really good block. I trained. I loved judo again by the time I finished. Fell in love with the process. I didn't really want to compete anymore. So it was great. And I think I was also really lucky with the people around me. Like my family have always been incredibly supportive. And my coach, Darren, he really set me up well for my transition as well. But he told me to do my master's through COVID, which I wouldn't probably have done. I didn't have any intention of doing it, but he kept drip feeding and said, yeah, you should really do it. And you should do your coaching courses and you should do this, you should do that. And actually, by the time my career came, I had so many things on my CV that would make me employable, which probably wouldn't be there if he hadn't edged me in the right way and nudged me to do these things. So, very lucky that I've got him as a mentor and coach. So, he definitely set me up well for the transition.
I think that is perfect, because one of the questions I had was, what's the difference between performance coaching, being coached in terms of that mindset, and then being mentored, right? Because I think there's obviously a significant difference between all three. Now, obviously, he coached you in terms of that physical performance and how you had to prepare, and looking at what you were doing on the stage, and looking at the reviews and reflections and the analysis that goes into it. Then he was coaching you mentally, and then he got you in a space where you went on to do your masters, and then there's a level of where he's mentoring you to go on and transition into your career. But there's also that level of management which underpinned that. So the difference between coach, mentor, and manager, right? And he could have very easily, coached you, got your performances out of you, and then moved on to the next athlete, like you see with a lot of coaches, right? But there he was, managing you by trying to set you up for that transition and making sure that you're in a space when you retire, you've gone on to do things which are interesting you, and giving you a pathway beyond that. Because sometimes you might have that 15-year period where you're so focused on sport, and there might be some financial benefits over that time. Some people become very comfortable, some people have a good life because of it. There's lots of variance towards everyone's different lives from their backgrounds and things. And sometimes when you see athletes retire, they don't really know what to do when they retire. At that point, they're sort of lost, because that's all they've ever known is training and being in the gym. And sometimes that's why you see athletes retire and then they come out of retirement after a few years, because again, they don't really know what to do. But it was great that you've had someone who was such a supporting mechanism which set you up for the pathway beyond being an Olympian, being a competitor, and that you're happy within space through that transition because of the support that you received.
No, I've been very fortunate. I think After Tokyo, yeah, I didn't really know what to do. Do I go back to judo? I was a bit lost at that point, probably. And probably why I went back to judo, I didn't quite feel done. I felt like that Olympic medal was, yeah, something I still wanted to go for. So it was 1 foot in, 1 foot out a little bit for the first year, but then I committed to it. And yeah, once I committed, that was decision made. But I think if I'd stopped at that point, it would have been a very different feeling during my transition. I think I probably was transitioning really from, yeah, 2022 through to, well, from Tokyo really, 21 really, all the way through to those next 3 years. I was very up and down in that period really. So although the transition is technically once I retired, I was probably transitioning throughout that period really, which made it a little more gradual when I think about it like that really.
Even though you're happy in terms of your career and that transition, and you say that fire isn't there, do you think, you know, in a year and a half, 2 years, that fire might start to rebuild naturally? Because, you know, if you're a born competitor and you've got these experiences and you know it's always in you somewhere, that you might go, oh, I fancy, you know, competing at, you know, British level or national level, or you know, whether there's the Welsh level, right? Is that something that would sort of, you know, sway you a little bit to compete and do something, you know, locally, and just to keep you, oh yeah, I like having that trophy, or oh, that was a nice medal or belt, or, you know, something I could win?
I am 99% sure. No, that I don't think that's ever gonna. I think my judo fighting days are definitely behind me. I think it's the sort of sport that it's very difficult to do once you get to your late, well, should we say early 40s? I think past early 40s. Don't get me wrong, there's people that do it and I've got a lot of admiration for them, but I don't think I'm gonna be one of those people. I think I started playing netball again and I love netball. So I think I've always loved netball. It was between netball and judo when I decided to take judo seriously. So it feels like nice that I can go back to that now and enjoy that a couple of times a week. Running as well, I've been enjoying doing that. I think I'm definitely probably gonna get that. I need something competitive to, yeah, take my attention. I did the Newport half at the beginning of the year, and that felt really good. It got me back into training again, and I had a goal. So yeah, I think I'll definitely need something constantly to be a goal. May it be netball or running or high rocks maybe, or CrossFit, but I don't think it'll be judo in terms of competitiveness. Again, I've had enough judo now. But from a coaching perspective, I'm really enjoying the coaching side of judo. So I can see getting more involved with that, and that maybe give me my competitive fix there.
And that's great to hear, because we'll touch upon coaching a little bit more in a different aspect, and look at that transition between your life and exploring that, because it's interesting to talk about what your influences have been, and certainly what you want to achieve as a coach, because that might be very different towards how you were coached, how you were performing, and what you instill within those that you get to work with. But you know, you're still there, you know, doing something of a high performance, because, you know, high rocks isn't easy. It's not something which I fancy. And, you know, that was in Cardiff, I believe, on the weekend just past the stadium.
Yeah.
And you see some of the people in the pictures and you're like, whoa, what a big event that is. And the complete physical preparation, which I've seen from some photos, and even doing, you know, marathons and things like that is still a, you know, high performance, where, you know, netball still is, but, you know, a marathon can really have a big impact upon your legs and that physicality which goes into it, because you're on that road running and you're constant, you know, that bashing, and that, you know, that takes it off. Whereas if you're playing on a netball court, you know, you've got that different surface, you know, it's a bit more sustainable to play rather than doing lots of marathons, and you get to see that difference which comes into it. And it's interesting when you talk about, you know, sort of boxing, judo in or putting judo in a box, right? Because when you look at you know, say Vinnie Jones and Eric Cantona, they both retired, they've gone into acting, and they sort of just left football straight there. Whereas you see, you know, others, you know, like Jill Scott and Gary Neville, yes, okay, they're retired, but they're in the media and involved around football and their sport from a different aspect. Or then you get some managers, some coaches. Whereas when those have retired and put it in boxes and completely take their pathway somewhere else, it's quite interesting, because you're like, well, all those skills and experience and contacts, and you're just sort of leaving it there and going off to do something completely different. Where, yes, okay, you're still within that world, and yes, you're now coaching judo, but it's interesting that, you know, you're happy with the competitive levels which you've had, and you're sort of going, right, yeah, that's great, it's in a box, but what's next in terms of coaching? Like, that can be for an outsider and someone listening, and someone who wants to become an athlete, or you know, professional in their sport. They might be listening and going, how does someone do that? You know, that's mind-blowing that they can just box something up and move on. And I think that's part of a mindset which develops over a period of time, which you've touched upon there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes you just need time to regenerate. I think, yeah, I've been doing this since I was, well, 21 full time. But I've been training my whole life, really, and it's intense. The amount of traveling, the amount you put into it is, it's not just a job, it's your actual life. You're constantly thinking about it. Now I've stepped into the working world. I work my hours. I'm really passionate about it. I really enjoy it, but I can switch off when I'm not in it. So there's a massive level of stress that I've always felt in my life that's just gone now, which feels really nice. And I'm enjoying it at the moment, but I know it's only going to stay for a period. I feel like it's a time to, re-energize, and then there'll be a point where I want a new challenge. Whatever it may be. I don't know, run a marathon, run an ultra marathon, or something that I need to get my teeth into again, you know. But I think that'll just be, the time will come once I'm fully recharged again, really.
And I think what you say there is, you've had that stress in your life for such a long period of time, and you sort of see athletes, you know, revert to, you know, unfortunately, alcohol, drugs. Some, you know, take their lives because of the performance levels which are really placed upon them. And if you say from the age of 8 as well that you've been competing, you know, that's you know, coming up a 30-year period where, you know, just under 30 years, right, where you would have been involved in the sport from some capacity in training. And you look at that, you think, you know, they might have delayed life, they might have broken up friendships, you know, they haven't really had that relationship which they've wanted, because they're traveling, and, you know, that can have its effects of its own. You know, they're not around family as much, and, you know, they might feel isolated in the hotel rooms. And then it comes down to training, then they're being compared to other people, then they're on a performance plan and their diets are changing, they're constantly pushed on their mindset, they're judged in the media, and there's a lot of these things which come into the sort of contrast of these different components which come into it, and I think that's the important factor there, is you're now feeling a huge weight lifted off you. That stress is sort of just released and gone at the moment that you knew you were ready to retire, which, you know, is elevated you towards being re-energized and moving on into something in your life which you're really happy to accept.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, exactly what you just said. Just feeling, happy that it's the right time. The transition's been, like, I don't like to, like, make out that it's been super easy, the transition, because I know it's so difficult for a lot. But I think the key things were having the real supportive people around, and just giving it attention, and thinking, like, making sure you're always thinking, what am I going to do when I finish? And giving yourself skills. I think sometimes you're thinking, oh, I need to get a wage once I finish because I need money to live. But I think if you can change that kind of perspective to actually thinking, what skills can I get? Like, just coaching at a club for free for a few nights a week, that gives you skills that you didn't have. Or going to talk at a school, you might get paid, you might not get paid, but actually that public speaking skill is something you can put on your CV. If you, like, go and look for these things, they might be free at the start, but you're gathering skills, and before long people want to pay you to do things in different areas. So I think it's kind of just putting yourself out there and saying yes to lots of different experiences, upskilling and building your confidence, and that just puts you in a much better place once you finish.
I completely love that, and automatically I know that clip is going to be so important for the students which I work with, because you know, as I get them involved in projects, whether that's coaching, volunteering, whether it's doing a podcast themselves, right? You know, it's all the skills which come into it. It's your interviewing, it's your research, it's your preparation, it's your communication, your confidence, how you present, you know, how timely you're going to be, what, are you punctual? Did you use, you know, correct manners when you're talking to someone? What kind of questioning techniques? And there's so many different things, just, you know, from one one project which they can come on. And students often say to me, sir, you work full-time in a school, why do you want to go on and do coaching, especially when it's free? And I'm like, do you know what, there's so much which I love about coaching, right? Because I get to obviously impact different individuals. I hopefully get to set them up for life. I get to develop their own skills, but at the same time I get to know different family members, different players. I know different coaches from different clubs, and suddenly I'm networking. You know, I've got this great environment which I'm in, and then I'm developing my skills in terms of coaching and how I present, and again my questioning techniques, and how am I implementing teaching, learning, coaching, mentoring in all of that, and then that's developing me. Then I might go and have a bit of mentoring myself in terms of how I then improve, and then these jobs skills are transferable across having a job. And then suddenly I've been grassroots coaching, I had academy opportunities, and then I've taken that into working full-time in teaching, and I never know what's going to open up in the future. Like I never knew I was going to have a podcast at one point, and again those skills are the things that I've got to develop. So what you said there, I think I'm completely in the same camp as you, and I'm glad that you said it there, because skills are so important. In the way that you can just say yes to things and open up, the more that you will network, the more skills that you develop, the more experience. You never know what job opportunities or other opportunities will open up your way by just entering the door in one pathway, and however many other doors might open up from that.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I mean, you also don't know what you're good at and what you like and what you don't like. You've been an athlete for so long that you know that inside out. And there's actually loads of skills that you learn as an athlete: the discipline, the hard work, the attention to detail. There's just, yeah, so many that are transferable. But you come out and you can feel like, oh, well, what do I do now? That's all I know. But if you just start saying yes to things, for example, I started working with great athletes, doing schools talks. I've never done a talk in front of people. The thought of it made me very nervous, and I put loads of prep into creating my talk and doing the details around what the assembly was going to look like and everything. And the first one I was super nervous, but it went good. And then I got a little buzz out of it, and I did another one and it was a bit better, and it just improved each time. And now I can comfortably get up in front of 300-400 people, tell my story, speak. Yeah, not worried that I'm going to mess up or interact with the people and the questions, and I'm comfortable doing that. And that didn't take long, just maybe, yeah, a few times doing it, and I've got a new skill, and you've got more confidence. And then, yeah, when I went for job interviews, I hadn't had an interview before. So I just immersed myself in the process of it. Yeah, how do I create a CV? What sort of questions are they going to ask me? And I just really enjoyed learning all those new skills. I had to make a PowerPoint presentation for the one, and I just went down a rabbit hole on learning how to create a good PowerPoint presentation. I was doing it for like 4 hours, and it just went like that. You know, when you get into that like zone place where it just, yeah, you're just immersed in it. So yeah, I just think it's about, yeah, just saying yes to things, doing new things, seeing what it is that makes you tick. You'll do stuff and you'll think, oh, I'd never want to do that again. I mean, I did a couple of sessions with year 7 kids, loads on the back, and that's not my bag, I've realized from teaching judo to that age. But yeah, you do it. And then like coaching at the club, I've done loads of coaching over the years, but mainly masterclasses and clinics, teaching my own things to just one group of people on a one-off occasion. But since I started working at the club, I've worked with the same athletes week in, week out, and been able to set a program. We're going to work on this for this 6 weeks, and then this for this next 6 weeks, and actually see them progress and see what works, see their flaws and how we're going to improve. So that's been, yeah, a whole new experience, and something that yeah, I've really enjoyed the creative aspect of it, and like trying to find my way as a coach, and yeah, learning judo. So as a judo player, you have your group of techniques that you perfect to the best of your ability, but there's loads of other techniques as a judo player that you could have done. So I've quite enjoyed learning the principles of other techniques that I don't do, and learning to do them and teach them. So yeah, coaching is a completely new skill, which I was very much aware of, but I think often good athletes sometimes think that they can just go straight into coaching, and it's you're suddenly going to be a good coach because you're a good player, and that's not the case. It's a very different skill. Don't get me wrong, I think if you were a high-level athlete, you've got a much better chance of being a great coach, but the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. So yeah, it's been cool exploring that, and yeah, finding my way on the coaching path.
So you're on that coaching path where you're working with these, you know, individuals which you've touched upon there. do you want to get to the games with them? Do you want to be stood on the side watching them compete on the stage and knowing that they're going to come out maybe with a medal or performance, and that you're going to be stood there with them, and just having that, opportunity, but from a coaching and management perspective, being back within that world from a different environment?
Well, I'm in two different roles at the moment. So with my Golf Wales perspective, working with a high performance team and the under 18 players at the moment. Yeah, for them, yeah, I want them to get to the Europeans and do the best they can be the best in the amateur game. And yeah, whereas the ones in judo at the moment, I'm working with like probably 12 to 18-year-olds mainly at the moment, and at the moment they're very much in a developmental stage, and I'm teaching a lot of them the basics and getting them up to senior level. So that Olympic, obviously that's the goal, that's the dream in maybe 10-15 years time, but that's so far away right now. I'm just focused on developing these athletes to the best they can and giving them the best shot to move on and do whatever they want to after. May it be judo, may it not be judo, but I think at the club we want to create good people. Something like judo is such a good sport that it can give kids confidence, give them agility, gives them a family. It's such a nice community, and you can be elite if you want. But yeah, it's not be the best in the world at all costs, because very few people get to that level. And judo is a tough sport. It's like you got to win a lot, you got to lose a lot. Sorry, even the best people lose a lot. It's different to a lot of sports. Actually, golf is quite similar from what I've experienced so far. Yeah, you don't win very often in golf either, but it's the same in judo. You got to lose a lot more than you win, particularly on the way to the top. So yeah, it's hard to stay in. So keeping these kids involved, creating a community and an environment where they're working hard, they're building resilience, and they're enjoying themselves. I think that's the main thing really at this stage of the pathway that I'm working with at the moment.
That's quite interesting, because when you say you have to lose more than you win, right, to really push yourself and develop that resilience and stay in sport, for a young individual who might be going through to you right, Natalie, and they have a few losses, and from a coaching perspective, that's a bit of progress there, because they're developing that resilience. You're looking at that continuous technique and how that might improve over time. You're never going to perfect it to the highest level, that accurate 100%, but you're going to get it, 99.2% there, right? But you're always going to achieve that. But the young person doesn't see that. They just see it as a loss. And yes, they might have taken, slight positive away from, okay, I performed much better than I did in the last fight, or I'm happier with the way that technique went, right? But for those who, when you look at that sustainable and you look at that motivation sort of output, for a young person, it might go, oh, I've had 6 or 7 losses. I just can't maintain that motivation, or where am I going to go, or am I ever going to get to that level, or am I going to compete, at the national levels, which, might be the next step ahead of me? How hard is it to work with a young person and to get that motivation into them? Because, motivation should come intrinsically, but when they're having so many losses, as you touched upon there, how difficult can that be as a coach to really work with a young person who might shut down from a mindset point of view?
It's really hard to manage, but I feel like it is the coach's responsibility to a big extent. It's managing the competitions they go to. Often you can, if a player's winning a lot, put them up to the next level, let them experience losing, and then bring them back down. It's like pushing them up to challenge them and then bring them back down to where they're comfortable winning. But it is a problem when you've got players that maybe are a bit heavier for their weight and their age, and there's not that level of competition for their age group where they can experience that winning. So I would say that's probably the most difficult point with it. But in that case, you can get them to do more of a theory base, get them in the club, get them enjoying, learning their technique, and then maybe push them up the grades. Because in judo, you can actually get a black belt without actually fighting anybody. You can get a technical black belt. So there might be some kids that are just not cut out for fighting. It's not for everybody. It's like a very specific type of person that is going to want to, fight people constantly for the rest of their lives. But there is another path. You can do a technical grading, learn all the techniques, be fit, and enjoy the community that judo has. So there's different paths, and I think it's just the coach's responsibility really to manage those ones that are really competitive and they want to push on and be the next Olympic medalist, or ones that like the camaraderie, they like judo, they like the technical side of it, they like the club environment, and giving a route for them both really. I think that's just the coach's job really to manage those things. I think another difficult part in the pathway is when 18 to 20, that transition between junior and senior, that's when a lot of players will decide to drop out. That's when it gets really hard, whether if you can stick it through that period, because you're going to lose a lot. The difference between the seniors and juniors, unless you're exceptional junior and you're lucky enough to come out of juniors and start winning a few fights as seniors, it's definitely not the norm. So that is going to be a tough period, and that's when you've got to really stick in. And often, if you've experienced the losses as younger, you're more likely to stay in through that period. Whereas if you've won everything as you come through as a junior, and then you start losing, you find it's a lot more difficult for the athletes then to deal with. I know for myself, when I was a green belt, I was probably about 13, and I lost every competition I went to, every single fight for a whole year. And I was not enjoying judo very much at all. But my parents were really supportive, and they said to me, okay, you don't have to go compete. You don't have to fight or go to any squad trains or anything, but it would be a shame to get this far and not get your black belt. So we made an agreement that I would just go to club once a week and keep going until I got my black belt, because we've come this far. And actually, just keeping me in it for that little bit after, I started to enjoy it again. I wanted to compete. You're going to have those stumbling blocks along the way, and it's just how the people around you keep those kids in, if they can see potential in them. Like judo might not be for everybody, and it's not that. Yeah, we need to keep everyone involved, but those ones you can see potential, you can see that they're growing from it. Getting your black belt, even if you don't want to fight, is a pretty cool thing to do for everybody, really, I would say. So yeah, I think I had another period when I was a brown belt, the same sort of thing. I was hating judo. I'd just gone to university. Life was hard. Yeah, managing my studies, training, getting battered on the mat. I didn't feel like I was at the level. I was also cutting a lot of weight at that point as well. And the only reason the main reason I was staying in at that point was, one, I can't really quit anything. I find it very difficult to stop anything. It kind of has to just naturally stop through injury, or somebody else makes the decision. And the other reason, I was getting funded. My results were just about good enough to be getting funding from Sport Wales and Welsh Judo at that point. So getting through uni without a side job, judo kind of was my job for those 3 years. But then about 21, I went up a weight category, stopped dieting, and my performances got way better, and I started to enjoy judo. So turns out if you eat more and stop worrying about your weight, it becomes more enjoyable. So I feel like I'm waffling a little bit now.
No, not at all. I was enjoying sitting back listening to you, right? And every time that you said something, I was like, "Oh, there's another question. There's another question. There's another question." Because it's generally so interesting, because you spoke about it there and related to the motivational aspect from being a coach. When I talked to you about you now being a coach and coaching those youngsters, you related it then to yourself at the age of 13 and that green belt, and having that time period where you consistently lost, and how different that was for you. But the support levels which you have from your parents, right? Let's take a little bit of a step back, and then that was just your breathing space, and then you took that step forward to move in the direction which you ended up moving in. So from, again, a parent point of view, that support, coaching, mentoring, management, you could almost see those different levels in between and how that really worked out for you. And the same can be said for many different individuals, which I'm basing this off a comparison of a bigger picture of coaches which I see and how I support them, and looking at how they could really help players take a step back. So if they're not enjoying their football pathway for a period of time, actually, why don't we drop the games off for, say, a month? Just enjoy training, and then let's try and get you back into the game. Now, for some coaches, they might think that's the worst step which you could take, because you're taking them out of that environment completely. Then suddenly you've put a barrier in place, and the player doesn't want to get back into playing. They're just happy with training. Well, actually, what I'm considering there is those pathways which you talked about. And for me, it's considering, well, actually, our football club, why don't we have two pathways? Because automatically we have players, they come in, they do their training, they play games every week. And that's great, because that's part of their routine and what's expected, and everyone wants to play games. But actually, what about the amount of footballers which we're missing who might just want a technical pathway? They just want to come into training every week, but they don't want to play games. So actually, it's a great opportunity opportunity for us to create participation, great training opportunities, but we could also create squad management because we're not taking as many players every week, right? So there was a little insight from you where I thought, you know what, that could be something which I take away and propose and look at how we formulate our programs. But you also touched upon the athletes between 18 and 21, that transition, the loss of those players, and really maintaining that mindset and getting through there. Now, as a coach, right, you spoke about, you know, slimming down, and you get to see those who naturally drop off because they don't have that mindset or motivation, or they find that transition really difficult. And it can be hard to be a coach of participation, which I've just touched upon there in terms of some of the thinking which I've had from my own practice, to being a high performance coach where you are getting the elite group of players and those which you work with and really slimlining them into champions and those who go on to the highest level of performance. How difficult is it to branch between being a coach of participation to a coach of high performance?
Well, it's a difficult one because obviously I'm starting at this period in the pathway. I've done probably about a year of consistent coaching now, at that 12 to 16, 18 level. The difference between the participation coach and the high performance coach, it's definitely very different. It's a different skill set. I feel like at a participation level, you can be a teacher very much in a lot of ways. Teach a lot of the fundamentals, teach them coordination and skills, movements, different movement patterns, make them well-rounded athletes, and give them the skills they need in order to progress when the high performance coach takes over in the later years. I think as you become a high performance coach, there's a lot more skills that come into a lot more varied skills, I would say, actually. I think you need to be a coach more in high performance, whereas I see lower down the pathway, I think you can get away with being more of a teacher. There's a lot of skills. The base is big. There's so much to learn. But when you become up to the high level, there's a lot more of relationship building, creating the right environment, understanding how that person ticks, being a really good orator, really good communication skills is really important. The relationship. There's a lot more different aspects, I would say, in a high performance coach. Also periodization, picking the right competitions, knowing how your athlete ticks. Lower down, I would say it's a little bit more, just a different skill set, really. I think you can be more of a teacher lower down and more of a coach as at high performance level, really.
That's a very interesting point because something which I often talk about is teaching and learning within coaching. And then a lot of coaches say to me, well, how's that being a coach? And I say, well, actually, your questioning techniques actually is coming into teaching and learning. There are assessment points which we're going to need. We need to understand where the player's understanding now, where their IQ is, because if they don't understand that and then you're saying key terminology to them and you're looking at different points of reflection, doing a bit of analysis, they're not going to understand what you're on about because they don't have that game analysis or that understanding. And we haven't assessed it. So therefore, our training program and curriculum is very much limited and isolated rather than having a cohesion and strategic approach. So it's interesting that you talk about the difference between the younger years and being a teacher and then going into coaching, because I think those two marry up. And I'm speaking to a teacher who's a friend of mine in another school at the moment, and they're saying they're bringing coaching into their practice along teaching into what they're doing. And I've been saying this for the past 6 months where I currently work. We have to do more coaching. That's what's missing from a lot of kids right now, because they don't know how they communicate, they don't know where their resilience is, they don't know how to set themselves up. So we need to coach them into that. Then we need to teach them from the classroom. So for me, they're very much impossible to remove from each other, especially in the world of coaching, especially in the room of performance, because they have to marry up, they have to be interlinked, they have to support the individuals. And I'm glad that you said it from high performance and from a coaching perspective about how that looks from your own experience, your own knowledge and your own skills into terms of what you're doing within your own practice now.
I think as well at the lower levels. So say at the moment I see the kids like twice a week for an hour and a half each time. In order to build the relationship and the level of contact you have at the elite level, like with my coach when at elite level, I was seeing him every day for 5 hours a day. So the difference in the time is how you manage that time and how much, obviously at that younger age, they're seeing the parents, their friends, their teachers, their school people a lot more than they are the coach. So it's how you use that time that you've got with them to the greatest impact. And obviously teaching them the skills and the movement patterns that they need is probably better use of your time at that point in terms of, but it's an interesting one, that teacher coach balance. And obviously at a young age, a lot of them don't talk much either. It's very much you kind of tell them what to do and they get on with it. But I think it's like creating that environment where they're happy and confident and they can be the best of themselves, really. But I think at both levels, creating the environment is critical.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And one of the questions which I had for you was, how as coaches can we not focus on discipline too much and overtrain players and athletes? Well, what you're saying there is that combination between teaching, learning, and coaching, and the way that you've been managing your life by your parents and supported by them, as well as, the coaches which you've had by taking that step back, by looking at that mental side over your physical performance, by just having that breather, looks at the way that you can not overtrain an individual, because you see some coaches constantly push. We have to be very disciplined. We have to be 100% on terms of the standards every time we see each other. Okay, right, you've got 3 contacts a week, say for an average, 13, 14-year-old player, they're training twice, they got a game on a Sunday, they do that for a month, then suddenly they got 12 sessions, they do that for, 5 months, then, you got 60 sessions there. So you've expected them to be on 100% for 60 sessions over 6 months. Look at the burnout which you might cause that 13, 14-year-old, especially where they're having that growth spurt as well, and that period of, puberty and things that come into it. They can sometimes overtrain it because they're trying to instill their standards too much rather than having a pathway of coaching. How difficult can that be when you see other coaches doing that to some of the individuals and young people which you see in a coaching pathway?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think, like, for judo, it's a long game. It's not the sort of sport you can just pick up and then in a few years be in the Olympic Games. You've got to put in the years, and like you say, you don't want these kids to burn out. The best thing they can be doing at a young age is doing lots of sports. Like when I was a kid, I was doing netball, tennis, athletics, football, everything around judo. I didn't specialize in judo till I was 18, which is probably quite late for most people. Most people specialize earlier than that, but actually it was the best thing that ever happened, because I probably wouldn't have got to the level I did if I'd specialized earlier. If I'd been doing judo all in intense from 12 years old, I would have burnt out a lot sooner, and probably got injured a lot more. So that variation of sports stopped me getting bored, built a much better athletic base, made me more robust probably. So I think it's a long game. The kids need to enjoy the journey. They need to develop skills and have fun doing it. So one of my priorities is to make the sessions enjoyable. I want them to be working hard without realizing they're working hard. That's how I try to frame the sessions, really. I want them to enjoy.
And that's how I try to approach things. I want them to enjoy it, but they're working hard within the process, and they don't naturally know that. But what they've come away with is a sense of achievement as an outcome in terms of the session, whilst going away and going, that was great, I can't wait to come back next week, right? Or football's good, I want to come back. Whereas I think of some of the other coaches, I think the way they're coaching, and part of my role is to advise and coach and support the coaching team as well. And I'm trying to develop that culture, that environment, that mindset, and give them the support which they need. And I can think of a coach who's very disciplined, very much instilling the standards right now, and he has those expectations, and I can understand what he's doing. I understand the way that he's trying to push the team and improve for next year, but also considering the burnout and the impact that's having on these players, because he's trying to expect too much of them too consistently, and the negative impacts that might have on them, where they might turn around and just snap, or they might turn around and go, right, I've had enough of this. And that's the one thing which we're trying to steer away from, because we're trying to look at that longevity of each individual which we have, rather than just trying to instill the short-term successful results for the best of the team. Well, actually, unfortunately, if we sacrifice the league title this year, but we've created 90% of those who are going to stay on in the game into their 20s and 30s, actually, that's the biggest success. Okay, we didn't get that trophy. They might not have that memory from when they were 13, 14 of winning the cup or winning the league. Actually, sometimes it's hard to balance that up and look at terms of how we're coaching and managing, and looking at those objectives. So that's part of the process driven approach which I'm trying to work with the coaches, like you said you've done with your coach, and taking out the goal, which was the medal, and then looking at how you improve that performance at the same time, because I think that becomes part of your journey as well, which is important. When you were going off to the different types of games, and yes, it's amazing, you get to go to these different countries and places, and you get these different cultural experiences, and you might walk into the stadium or arena which you're competing in, and you're just taking it all in and looking and going, I'm going to be competing here. There's going to be a crowd, and it's going to be a big array of people, and it's going to be one of the most magical periods of your life. What was the most difficult period from any of the experiences which you had where you just didn't enjoy that type of tournament or event which you competed in?
That's a tough question. A competition I didn't enjoy. I don't know. I've always loved competing, to be honest. I don't feel like there was. I always said that if there was ever a competition that I didn't get nervous and I wasn't excited for, probably, it's time to quit. I don't think there was ever a time where no, I don't think you mean. I can't think of anyone when I didn't. I can't think of anything.
Well, no, and it's just interesting because I was just considering from the point of view of, you hear sometimes those athletes and performers who have been on podcasts themselves, and they talk about, might be in a World Cup or something like that. And they're like, I just didn't enjoy that experience. I was going through a tough period in my life. The manager came down hard on us. He was very disciplined. We just didn't go out and socialize, and we just hated that tournament, right? And I'm primarily thinking of like England squads when they were managed by like Fabio Capello and things like that. And the players always talk about how they just hated that period, and even when they arrived on the bus, they were in suits and they were sweating, it was too hot, and they just didn't have that great of an experience. And for me, it was just that consideration of what you might have gone behind the scenes in one of your tournaments, or what you went off to, and with.
I don't think there was a specific competition. I would say probably my first 3 years of uni, when I was making weight really badly, trying to diet down for 70 kilos. I was losing a lot of weight, like 12 kilos in the over 2.5 weeks for the competitions. It just got out of control. And in the evenings, I was just running all the calories I'd eaten in the day off on the treadmill. So that was not fun. There was a good 18 months where I was doing that, and that was not fun. I didn't enjoy that. I lost my love of judo in that period as well, and I think a large part of it was because of the weight making. But when I went up to 78s, everything changed. I started focusing on my judo, and my judo started improving. That was I can't really think of a competition though. I did notice as my career went on, the early years, all my friends were on the team with me. We had a really nice group of people going away, like the Rio Cycle. There's a great bunch of people, like my best friends these days. And the coaches, Darren and Kate. It was great. And then as the cycle changes, it's like one day you're suddenly the youngest in the group, and then you become the oldest in the group. And it's a whole new group of people. And then the next cycle, the same thing happens. And then the last cycle, I was the only one of my group still there. And it was very different the other way then. Like before, I'd always loved going away because you're with your friends constantly, your coaches, and it's all, everything's exciting. I love going back. I love going. But then it felt very much like a job in the last cycle. Although all the team were great, really liked them. But I was very much the oldest of the group, and wasn't my friends around me anymore. So it was a very different experience, and it felt more like a job rather than a passion in the last cycle, really.
And that's part of change which I consider. And I'm transitioning out of my role next year into going back to university full time to do teaching in a different capacity. And I think of the students which I have, and I know they're going to go through some change over the next 6.5 weeks that I have left with them, because they're going to have new staff members with them, and they're going to have a different way that they're going to be managed next year. And I'm almost feeling for them in a way where they're going to have a very different approach in terms of the support which they have, in terms terms of the discipline levels which they're going to receive. And I know that's going to be a tough time period, and it's unfortunate when, you know, I consider when I was a student and my favorite teachers left and things like that, and how I struggled with it. And now I'm considering it from a teacher point of view, where you have to go off and do things in your own life, and you know, there's things that you want to achieve. But unfortunately, those young people at the same time are going to experience what I experienced, and I know how tough that's going to be. But it's hard when the environment changes, and it's those unnatural changes which they hadn't, you know, wanted within their lives or hadn't expected, but it's come about naturally because that's the way life works, right? And it's the same for you, as you talk about there, being in that group and how that changed in that cycle. Because even when you look at footballers and you're seeing, you know, one player transfer out and then another player transfers out, and then suddenly everyone else who sat in the change room is no longer there anymore, and it's a very different team and environment. How different that can be, and then again, that can affect your motivation, your enjoyment, that, you know, perception of who you see yourself as you said there. You know, being the oldest in the group, you know, it can be hard to come across in your mindset, I suppose, where you're looking at going, how am I actually the oldest here? Is my role different? Do they see me differently? Are they the one that I look up to? Are they going, oh, actually, perhaps, you know, she's too old to be in the squad? Because when it comes down to performance, that's the kind of things which we consider. And you get to see, you know, different teams have, you know, under 30s recruitment policies and under 25s. And you're like, well, actually, you know, you might go and sign a 33-year-old who is going to be your elite performer this year from the experience and skill and the motivation which they have. They might be more motivated than the very technical 21-year-old. So it can be a very hard sort of transition between those mindsets and sort of the role and the position which you find yourself in, which isn't the most, you know, naturally positioned opportunity, because that's just happened naturally through life itself.
No, 100%. It's just the way of the world. I suppose there's that saying, isn't there? It's overcrowded at the bottom and it's lonely at the top. And I think that I can definitely see how that happens to athletes now. Before you know it, people have just fallen away and you've not even realized. Like, I've seen that happen to a lot of people. Feel very fortunate that it hasn't happened to me, but I think that's because I kind of was aware of it early on. But it's definitely, it's a real thing. It's just the circumstances and the environment just kind of lends itself to that. There is very few people at the top. And I think I was just very fortunate that the people that I was traveling around with, were some of my best friends, which made it much more enjoyable.
And again, that's the one thing that you've consistently said throughout, is that enjoyable experience. And that's something for me which I want to get across to the listeners, is, you know, always having that enjoyable experience and trying to make the most of it. Because, you know, there's times in your life where you make those sacrifices to be at the best of it, but you might not get the enjoyment elsewhere, and then that can be hard because all your will becomes, you know, a little bit grey, and you don't want all that grey. You want there to be, you know, that blue and green in there. And yes, you stay very focused on becoming that high performer. I think it has to be that balance, and you have to enjoy what you're doing. And yes, there will be tough moments where you just didn't enjoy training that day, or you know it's going to be a tough period, but generally you have to be across the board enjoying what you're doing at the end of it. And when it comes to high performers, they're enjoying being in the top team, they're enjoying being number one, they're enjoying scoring the points, they're enjoying, you know, the tournaments, they're enjoying the teammates which they have, because when they retire they look back and go, I wish I could live those glory years again, or I wish I could be back there. So I think you have to enjoy it, because sometimes time passes us by too much, and we can look back on it and really miss those moments. So for me, that's critical. You touched upon, and we touched upon, you know, a bit of the media side, and again, how that can affect the mindset of an individual. In your career, was there a time where you had that, you know, media scrutiny, where you had, you know, negative comments online, or you might have had some backlash or feedback, and that was difficult to sort of comprehend as an individual, as an athlete?
I've never had, touch wood, any negative media. To be honest, during my career, I was just so focused on what I was doing in my process. I didn't really. Obviously, there is a level of media, like with every major champs, you would have to have interviews and there'd be press, but I didn't, like, I wasn't big on social media. I wasn't posting all the time. I wasn't trying to increase my following or anything like that. So I didn't, it wasn't an element of things that I was particularly focused on. I just wanted to do judo and be the best judo player I could be, and the rest, I wasn't really fussed on that side of things. I know that's different for a lot of people. I think in today's society, it probably is really beneficial to buy into that side of things and get your social media, have loads of followers so you can get better sponsorship deals and stuff like that. but yeah, that wasn't something that I really engaged in. So I probably got off lightly on that side of things, luckily.
Well, it's only consideration for the
that other people get, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what you said there. I think, it's just that consideration as you were talking. I was like, right, what about this? And asking you from that perspective, because, sometimes I see athletes get absolutely, rinsed online, and I'm reading through the comments. I'm like, what is the need for such hate in this moment? Like, why do you really hate on them? What is the need for that negative comment? And it was just consideration from, that being at the highest level, being under scrutiny, that mindset which you have, some of the variants which will impact us, and some of the things which bring us down. Right, but you also touched upon funding and Sports Wales, and being an athlete can be very different to being a footballer. For example, a footballer, you're paid a full-time wage, right? Whereas an athlete, you are fundraising, you are reliant upon funding, you might have to work part-time hours, right? And it just made me think of something in the news recently, right? And it was Kurt Adams Rosenthal's, right? So he is a current canoe slalom racer, right? And part of it is that he is joined OnlyFans himself to raise his other funds around training. Now, he's been suspended as a result of this. As an athlete yourself who's been in that position and comes from the perspective of, requiring that funding and what you did to compete at those games, what's your sort of stance on that from your perspective?
I mean, everybody's situation is completely different, isn't it? So yeah, whatever anybody wants to do in order to raise money or what their situation is, I can't really comment on it because it's their situation, it's their reality. I mean, from my situation, growing up, my parents, I came from a good background. I was very fortunate that my mum and dad could take me to competitions. Living in rural mid Wales, it's very difficult to get everywhere. I mean, my career would have been a non-starter if my mum hadn't been willing to take me to Cardiff once a week, Swansea twice a week, Hirwaun once a week. We were like traveling an hour to an hour and a half every single night of the week in order to train, and that's before taking into consideration all the competitions that they were taking me to up and down the country. So not only the time commitment, it was the financial side of it as well. So yeah, from the start, I was very fortunate from that respect. And then when I went to university, my performances were good enough to get Sport Wales funding. I think it was a small amount at the time, maybe 6 to 8 grand a year for me and one other lad. Met the target. You needed to get a European Cup medal or something like so, that sort of level in order to get it. But that was a life changer that made it possible in those years, really. And also, so being from Wales, it's all we don't get many players that get through to senior British level. Over the years, we've had some cadet success, junior success, but it's very rarely we've had anybody gone to senior level. And I think it's often because we're not quite good enough when it comes to that senior level to get on that British team at that point when you come out of juniors. Whereas at my point, Sport Wales supported me through that. I was also not good enough to be on the British team at that point. I think I was maybe on the British squad, possibly. I did win the nationals at my last year of juniors, but I wasn't quite good. I wasn't good enough to be the best, getting taken away, getting all the support and the funding. And Sport Wales supported me on Welsh Judo in that period to get me good enough. So without that support and without that funding at that stage, I wouldn't have been able to make that step forward. And then when you had to get 2 Grand Prix medals in order to get on UK sport funding, and that's a minimum requirement at the time. Once I did that, then I was on funding from UK Sport, and then you had to hit the medal targets each year to move up, or basically whatever medals you got, it corresponded to a level of funding from 28 grand, which is A funding. And, I think maybe the lowest support was like a F funding, maybe about 5 grand a year, possibly, which would normally just cover your accommodation costs at the National Centre. But to get on funding, if you weren't based in the centre at that time, you could only have access to bands C and above. So you had to get 2 Grand Prix medals, which was C funding, 15 grand a year, and then you were on the programme, and you were funded, really.
That's quite an interesting insight, which I knew you could acquire funding, but I didn't realize there was different levels and different criteria to meet to in order to generate the higher funds, right? And it was only a consideration when a perspective that I was considering, because he's doing what he needs to do to raise that money in the same way as every athlete and everyone who wants to compete does it. And I was a bit taken back. I was like, well, in boxing they very much support a number of key boxers who are sponsored by that site and that company, and they just embrace it. They just take it on, and it's completely fine. But yet here we are in a different national governing body, and they've suspended a different athlete because he's utilizing the same kind of tools. It's very mad to consider from a different sort of hat, the embracement and the different views on it compared to a national governing body. But my point is it can be hard to compete at those levels, because people think it's just training, but actually okay, there might be that time which they've considered. Actually, where is the big financial cost and investment that we have to make or acquire to really get to those levels? And okay, football's a little bit different. Again, you get paid to become a scholar, then you go into hopefully a pro contract, and then that unravels from there. Whereas when you're an athlete, you have to keep working, you have to keep raising funds, you have to find that financial support to get to the levels, and that is something which is really required of you. And again, that comes down to that resilience. That has to come down to, right, how can I network, how can I put myself on there, what am I doing to meet my criteria, am I really performing right, what's my strategy, how am I going to get there? Again, that comes down to support management, coaching, and all these different insights which are really important. There's been a lot of incredible things which we cover, right, Natalie? And I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I'm just going to finish up with one question. We'll move into some quick fire questions, which is nothing to catch you out, and hopefully just finishes off just with a little bit more insights into you. But when you were younger and you were becoming an athlete yourself, was there one athlete which you looked at that you aspired to be like when you were younger?
Yeah, Denise Lewis, the heptathlete. I remember watching the Sydney Olympics when she won gold, and I did athletics as a kid as well, and I always wanted to be good at everything. And the fact that she was good at everything, I really liked Denise Lewis as a kid.
I love that insight. And part of what we do with some of the students which I teach, we teach them upon different role models and life stories and different insights. So I get to do a lot of reading, I put some resources together, then I do that with students. And when I've done one of the individuals from your background, which is Jessica Ennis-Hill, right, you look at the incredible sort of CV and the different disciplines which she's competed in, and you're like, wow, how much do they extract from their life and their career? And I think that's exactly what you're saying there, in terms of, right, I've extracted being the best. I've extracted not only that in school, I've done it in judo. I'm extracting being the highest level and competing at the Olympics. Now I'm looking at coaching and performance pathways and looking at what I could develop, and seeing where that goes in the long term. So I think it's extracting that from life, and again seeing where that opens up in 10 years, and again those opportunities from where you are touching on skills, where you are saying yes to opportunities, and you never know what's going to open up. Because as soon as you spoke about working at Golf Wales and those different pathways, I was like, right, I could probably list 50 different people that we both know from our worlds, where I'm actually a qualified PGA golf coach, right? That's something which came up in my pathway, and a lot of what I did for local
You're
authority.
actually a golf coach?
I am actually qualified golf coach. I put through that qualification.
Oh, fab.
So, but that again, that's saying yes to things and having those opportunities. And I went into lots of schools, and we did a big there was a big golf project at the time where they're pushing golf out the primary school. So I was really upskilling my golf skills at the time whilst coaching, and I was coaching golf most days. It's like I never saw myself doing this when I was younger, coaching golf practically full time, right? But that's not an easy sport to do. It's that back strain, it's that continuous swing, it's that technique. Golfing is not an easy sport to really get into.
Yeah, no, I can see that. It's funny, isn't it? When people's perception, the general perception is it's quite an easy sport because it's not, doesn't look super exhausting. But yeah, getting immersed into it, and chatting with the players and just getting a better feel for it, it's so much harder than anybody realizes, until you pick up a golf club and actually see what's actually involved. The amount of time they're out on the course and the mental energy that goes into it, the concentration, and even being on your feet for that long. Like, I've never walked for 4 hours before. Well, maybe the odd hike here and there, but actually being on your feet for 4 hours is quite a lot walking, let alone, concentrating on what you've got to do, and like swinging the golf club as well. It's a lot more demanding than it appears to the untrained eye, if you know what I mean.
And I see that in snooker. So I watch a lot of snooker. And Ronnie O'Sullivan is someone that I watch, and I've always followed his journey. So when they're talking about his sports psychology and his performance, and I've seen his different techniques, even when I've gone down the club and played myself, because I'm like, right, I want to be the next Ronnie O'Sullivan. I wish I was as good as him. Suddenly you're like, right, I have to step into this shot, or how my legs positioned. Then I'm thinking about that. Then I'm like, oh, right, I've got to lean my back here. Right, my back's hitting. Right, where's my technique? Right, I've lifted up my arm. I've put my arm out. Right, my arms are in. Right, I've got to extend. Like, that is a lot of technical skill which is going into that. There's a lot of mental performance which comes in. So when you touch upon there, you know, you're looking at these players. He's played for, you know, like 18 frames, and then you look at that mentalness, and then you look at like playing at World Championships for 2 weeks where he might be playing almost every day, and the amount of different players. And it's the same for golf there, right? You know, it's hard to sustain that over a period of time, and you know, physically and mentally.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like they're competing for like 5 days in a row, and then they go, yeah, a couple of days, and then they're competing somewhere else. It's constantly, brain's constantly on. So yeah, it's not like that intensity of some sports, you know, like judo, the intensity is incredibly high. But it's just such a long, sustained effort for, yeah, a long, long period of time. Yeah, it's tough.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And the final question before we move on to quick fire questions: what is the one thing that you always wanted from any coach which you had in your career, which something that you've always looked for, always wanted, and always aspired to have, in no matter who you were working with?
I never knew what it was that I was looking for, but I've probably worked with 20 coaches in my career, if not more. Yeah, I've experienced a lot, and everyone's got their thing, you know. Um, some people are really good motivators, some people are really good technically, some people can just get inside the athlete's head and like bring the best out of them. That everybody's just got, yeah, their niche that they're good at. But I think being a rounded coach, yeah, there's no gold standard, is there? But yeah, finding people that can do all those things well is very hard to find. I think I was really fortunate with Darren. I mean, he was, yeah, the best all rounder that I've come across, and I was very lucky enough to work with him. So, yeah, like I said, a lot of people have got very strong characteristics and strong qualities that I've learned a lot from. But yeah, in terms of my coaching, I think I've taken bits from everybody, and yeah, taking the bits that I think their strengths and trying to incorporate them in what I do. So having that, yeah, compare so many different coaches, yeah, it's been really, really great learning curve for me, really.
Very, very important, I think, to have that all-rounded experience and take something away from every coach, and what they can do to really contribute to each player, whether that's technically, mentally, and what they can bring in terms of their own game. Right, the quick fire questions then, Natalie. Okay, right, I'm gonna start with the first one. Right, what is your most favorite food?
Kebabs.
Oh, right, that's a great start already. Right,
Love
you
fish
touched
kebab,
upon
lamb.
this earlier. You
Sorry?
touched. Sorry, I didn't realize you would finish. My bad.
Oh, no, sorry, I just said lamb shish kebabs. That's the one.
Oh well, you know, now you're retired, you can enjoy them more than, you know, when you were competing. Because I suppose if you had them when you were competing, your coach would be coming straight after you.
Yes. Well, I don't know, it's not the worst thing for a treat, like for a cheat meal, is it? Could be worse, I suppose.
Mm. Okay, what is your most favorite dessert then?
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, I've got a very sweet tooth. Um, chocolate fudge cake with ice
Good
cream.
shout. Good shout. Okay, if you could have competed in any other sport or discipline to the highest level, what sport would it have been?
Athletics or netball. I'd go netball because that was my favorite sport growing up.
If you weren't involved in sports coaching or high performance pathways, which you are now, and you just went in sport, what would you be doing in life?
I literally don't know. If I wasn't in sport, I suppose maybe medicine was the other thought when I was growing up. I went to be a doctor. Um, that's probably the only other avenue I would have considered. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. What's your most favorite film?
Titanic.
Interesting again. Most favorite TV show?
Oh, that's so tough. I mean, Friends, probably Friends, if I had to say one. I can watch that over and over again and not get bored. Whereas there's not many things I watch numerous times.
I rate that. That's a decent one. Favorite book?
Champion's Mind.
Good book. Favorite place to travel or to go on holiday to?
Oh, that's tough. I just like going to new places all the time. I don't really like going back to places. Let's go Japan, because it's completely different.
Yeah, I can imagine there's something that's on like my bucket list to do, and it just seems so busy and vibrant and different, and a very different world to what we have.
Yeah, for sure.
So, do you have any superstitions?
I used to have a lot of random ones, like wearing the same knickers. I wore the same knickers for every competition my whole career. I washed them in between, but yeah, I had to do that. And there was like little rituals, like just before I went on the mat, I'd take my mat off, I'd hit my face in a certain way, hit my legs in a certain way. Yeah, I remember at one point it just got too many. There was like, I think every time you do well in a competition and you did certain things, you're like, oh, I need to do that well again next time. If I don't do it, next competition's go bad. But then you lose, and then you're like, okay, I don't need to do that stuff now. I think there was one point where it's like, these superstitions are getting way out of control. So I just cut every single one and then started afresh and tried not to get too many more. But
yeah,
I think it's just human behavior, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And you know, as you said there, you cut them out before the list became exhaustive, and then you spend like an hour doing all these things before you even get into the zone, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But definitely interesting about the first superstition which you have. I've never had that one before, so you know that's a great gold medal for that one in itself, right? If you could spend a day with anyone, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. Marley, my little niece.
Oh, cute.
She makes me smile, and she makes me think of, I'm really present when I'm with her. Forget about everything else.
That's nice. I think that's one of the most important things which I have in life is when you get into something which means something so much, just forget about everything else and just capture that moment for what it is. And when you talk about your niece there and her being so young, and again enjoying those moments in life before we grow too old and we get to look back as a memory, I think she'll really cherish that as you cherish it. So that's such a nice one to have.
Thanks.
Okay. That's okay. If there was one event that you wish, or that you could have competed at, whether that, you know, that be the Women's World Cup in football, or you know the netball standard of that, or you know the Masters in golf. If there was one other competition which you could have competed in, what would it have been in any other sport or area?
Probably Wimbledon tennis. I was always quite a big fan of tennis growing up. I did it probably like for about 5 years, but I got a bit bored of it in the end. But I've always really enjoyed watching Wimbledon every year on TV. Yeah, Wimbledon, I reckon.
Yeah, I think that's one of the highest performance levels that you can have, and you get to see what goes into it, and you know that sustained period. When I saw a great picture the other day, it was like Rafael Nadal, Andy Murray, Djokovic, and then Federer. And you're looking at the legacies which they all had in the picture and what they encapsulated, and the amount of success which they had was truly incredible just in that photo itself. Your 3 top tips for coaches, being a coach yourself.
Oh, I just did this for a video the other day. Best 3 bits of advice. What was it? Communication. Build really strong relationships with your athletes. To create a really good environment that the athletes can thrive in, physically, mentally, just as a person, really. And then the third one was be athlete-centered. Put your athlete at the center of all your decision making.
Good. I like those 3 top tips, and I like the way that you frame them together. What does reflection mean to you?
Ooh, what does reflection mean? I think reflection is having a growth mindset. I think if you're constantly reflecting and analyzing everything you've done, things that have happened, and then looking to improve on them, the next time you do it, that's just the basis of growth mindset and just developing and growing. So yeah, big on reflection.
I'm glad, because so am I. All right. One of the great reasons which I've had you on here, and there's been so much in that. And the final question, which is always nice to finish up on, what do you enjoy most about coaching?
I really like seeing people improve and like You know, they get really happy with themselves because they've achieved something that they didn't think they could, or yeah, I just like seeing people develop and grow and having a nice time, like enjoying doing it. I love taking a new game to club and being like, right, we're gonna do this tonight, and they all just like really enjoy it and get a buzz out of doing it. And then secretly they're getting better at skills at the same time. So like a double win.
This is why I love teaching. This is why I love coaching. This is why I get to love podcasting, because you get to see, all those different variants. And when you get to see the happiness and elation within some of the young people I work with, and get to see that impact and what they want to come away with, that's a high area which I get to really enjoy. Now, when I was reading earlier, and just to piece this off for we to finish up on, and this is incredible when I look at this, right? So we've got a 2014 Commonwealth game gold medal. We have 6 gold medals. We have 11 silver medals, 22 bronze medals. We competed in the British Judo Championships 2012, 2013, 2014, 2016. We competed in the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. We went on to win the Olympics. We were the first female ranked #1 in the world in 2017. We have the most incredible career of a 15-year period of Natalie, who had an incredible career, starting out at the age of 8, retiring at the age of 34, now transitioning into coaching. But when you look at the success which she's had in her career, that is some CV to really retire upon.
Oh, thank you. That's very, very kind of you.
But and that's when I read that and I'm listening things and I'm just doing my preparation and I actually put that together just as one. I'm like, wow, success, right? And when you get to look at that yourself and you say, right, that's now in a box. I'm happy. I'm retired. I'm now doing what I want to do. When you look at something like that, you can be more than happy putting that in a box and looking at what you've achieved. So, for anyone who's been listening, the incredible insights that I've taken away from this episode, but looking at what success could be, looking at performing at the highest level, looking at the experiences which you can have, looking at being the best in the areas you want to be, then this is a kind of conversation with an Olympian like Natalie, who has been so insightful tonight.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your time, and thank you for asking me to come on. It's been
Well,
great catching up and chatting to you.
likewise, and it's honestly been such a pleasure, and I've really been looking forward to this, and I'm thankful for your flexibility, but even greater for you saying yes and coming on, because again, it's been such a wonderful hour and a half with you, and it's a big thank you from me, and I hope you take care.
Oh, you too. Thank you very much.
But yeah, we try to be that group that can help be there for the players as a 3, because I think you mentioned earlier, you want to have different characters in the changing room. You want to have different personalities. You don't want the same kind of people, because you're not going to be able to move forward. If you've got 10 people and they all agree the same things, you're going to get to a point in time where actually you're going to become unstuck. You need that one person to actually be like, nah, I don't agree with that. Or actually, we should try this. And I think that's why the huddle works, is we're all quite different as human beings. And I think you need 3 different people in there, because some players will naturally gravitate towards me and my personality, but equally some might go to the other 2, and that's absolutely fine.